I don't like who you're becoming, Peter. We have reached a dead time in the games industry, and these periods used to last entire summers, but for now, it's just a few short weeks between Pikmin 4 and Armored Core 6. There are a lot of things we could do in this time, like look back to older games and topics, but I'm also told the internet hates older games, thinks they're boring, dull, and need remakes to be good. So the future then. 2023's fall is stacked, and the question on everybody's mind is, will PlayStation release another PS5 only game that manages to break beyond an 88 on Metacritic? Only one game has a shot of achieving this for the Blue brand in the remainder of 2023, and that of course is Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So today we're talking about what Marvel's Spider-Man 2 needs to be a 10, and if it is even possible. Now before we continue, I am not a critic. It is not my job to review video games. I am, however, a 26-year-old white guy, so of course I have very strong opinions about Spider-Man. Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018 is great. It borrows a lot of what past Spider-Man games already did great: aerial combat from Web of Shadows, satisfying web slinging like Spider-Man 2, and gathers them all together while also giving us what is now in my head the definitive voice of Spider-Man in Yuri Lowenthal. That praise in mind, I do look at the game as a solid mid to upper 8 out of 10. Didn't exactly revolutionize anything with its gameplay, but it did refine a whole lot and weave together a bunch of great ideas into a singular package, which is undoubtedly the greatest Spider-Man simulator in history. Now the story is where the game could have been elevated to a 9 or higher, but they played it safe. Spoilers for the first 20 minutes of PlayStation's Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man, but the second you get a phone call from Otto Octavius and you remember that there was some mystery villain filling out the ranks of the Sinister Six from that E3 trailer 3 months before launch, yeah, you know where it's going. Now clearly, this paid off commercially, and it is still a defining Spider-Man project, which is honestly probably what they set out to do with this game. I think that is pretty apparent in the identity this game has. It is just a red background, Spider-Man front and center, and it's just called Spider-Man. No subtitle or nothing. Spider-Man Miles Morales, in my opinion, does a lot of things that Sony's, PlayStation's, Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man does, and a little bit better, mainly in kit, the feeling of combat, and while I think the story is weaker overall, the runtime of Miles Morales is pretty excellent. When we look at Marvel's Spider-Man 2 releasing this October, that will be the third entry in this Insomniac Spider-Man franchise. Now, for myself and others who feel similarly, we are probably expecting some sort of diminishing returns when we question how can you make the experience better, or if the game will be any more fun to play the third time around, or if it's just going to be more of the same, but now we have tentacle powers. So we once again find ourselves in a position where the story is that special sauce that could elevate this to a 9 or even a 10. And historically, things called Spider-Man 2, period, are lasting pieces of work in their respective mediums that create a bar that everything else in that genre is judged against for eternity. No pressure. Now, in comparison to the first game's marketing, which may or may not have affected your view of the Doc Ock twist and the story overall, they've been keeping their cards very close to the chest in the run-up to Spider-Man 2. But seeing as this is a Spider-Man story about Peter Parker getting the symbiote, we have to ask ourselves, is there any way this story is not exactly what we think it is going to be? Let me tell you how I think Spider-Man 2 story is going to shake out. Some time has passed since the events of the last two games. Both Spider-Man and Spider-Man have their own areas of New York to cover. Peter meets up with his best friend Harry after his trip and learns that he is dying and scared. Harry even admitting to what Norman had to do to keep him alive, and he wasn't on a trip after all. Peter responds by saying immediately he'll go to the lab and try and reverse engineer something and figure out a cure for Harry, but gets gunked. We progress through the game, taking care of Craven and his goons. Mary, Jane, and Miles say, "Peter, this isn't you," and give disapproving glances one too many times. Peter snaps, and the player, as Miles, fights Peter, who loses the symbiote. It finds its way to one of these three men, and we have our Venom for the last third of the game. Now, Insomniac, very rocksteady circa 2014, has been claiming that this take on Venom is entirely new to us and something we haven't seen before, which is promising. And I would love to give them the benefit of the doubt, because clearly they know how to make a bold decision. My sentiment towards the, I'll say, classic story of 2018 standing true is absolutely elevated by the ending of that game. I think Insomniac, who are inarguably the workhorse of the PlayStation first party this generation, they've been carrying the PS5 in its 3 years on shelves so far. If they want to break through that 90 plus ceiling on Metacritic, they need to be taking swings on the level of that Aunt May beat consistently throughout the story. If we do just end up getting another version of the symbiote storyline as we've seen it before, You're Not Yourself, Problems with MJ at Church, etc., I think we will find ourselves in a similar situation to the first Insom Spidey, where it's kind of a definitive adaptation of something we all kind of get the gist of already. But if there's a world where the consequences are fucking dire for Peter's actions in the black suit this time around, or if Venom ends up being an ally, or as much as the internet wanted to believe it, and as unlikely as it is, ends up actually being Peter, and come credits, Miles is the one and only Spider-Man, I think there is enough narrative juice there to attain those extra few points. Regardless, I am very excited for Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Insomniac knows how to make an incredibly fun game to play, and they clearly get Spider-Man in a way that a lot of other teams just do not. Where outside of Spider-Verse, this game is the best Spider-Man project since the last time we got something called Spider-Man 2. So let's see if another Spider-Man 2 can also be a 10 out of 10. That's all for Low Poly this week. I'll see you next time. At one point in time, I told myself I was going to wait to buy a PlayStation 5 until Spider-Man 2 released so I could buy a Spider-Man PS5 that matches my Spider-Man PS4 Pro. Beautiful console. Well, I bought my PS5 last year and hoped that I would not regret it when the time came for the Spider-Man 2 PS5 to hit shelves. And we got our first look at it last week at San Diego Comic-Con, so let's see if I regret it. Alright, looks like we have a special edition console, DualSense, and that's a first. Faceplates for a special edition console, so you don't have to buy the console. Now, the DualSense is solid. I'm not a huge fan of any of the special edition DualSenses, honestly. I think they are over-designed, but this one is clean. The PS5 itself, though, is it possible to be over-designed while also being minimalist? All they needed to do was this, and you match the beauty of that PS4 Pro perfectly. And listen, I love Spider-Man, and it's great they're giving me the option to not buy a whole console to show that I love Spider-Man. Not buying it.